This is The Weekly Set, an official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com.
I wish I was the monster you think I am.
You have come here to beseech me?
Yes, for your soul.
Madness can be a medicine for the modern world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I'm your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about Season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. It is August 10th at the time of this recording, and this is episode 267 of the podcast. So let's kind of just jump right in. I mean, we talked already about Season 1, and we kind of went over the general premise and what's kind of happening. I think it might just be best to kind of cover Season 2 in a similar way. Let's just go down the numbers of the children and talk about their stories as they're going on.
Yeah, I mean, because they each have their own storylines in this season, obviously. And, of course, we have to say, like, this picks up right after where last season left off, where, you know, Vanya broke the moon and caused Armageddon, and number 5, you know, just jumped everybody out of there with time travel. And so we get to see, like, it opens up, we get to see where everybody landed. And it's interesting because, like, not everybody landed in the same place.
Well, they all landed in the same place, but in different times.
Well, yeah, but it's not the same place if it's a different time.
Well, I mean, but they landed, you know, in space and time, they landed in the same space, but in different times. So they landed like, they all landed in the same back alley.
I was trying to keep it simple.
But they all landed at different time periods. Like, this is all kind of about basically the lead up to the Kennedy assassination in 1963. And so they dropped everywhere from, I think the earliest one was like 1961.
Yeah. 1961 to 63.
And then some of them arrived, like, several of them arrived in 63, but at different times in 63.
Right.
So I think 5 arrived in like November or something, like right before, like October, right before the shooting.
They all landed in different points in time in Dallas in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. Let's just say 5's interesting because, and it gives you one of like the best scenes in the season, because when 5 lands, he lands in November of 63, and basically he lands right at the apocalypse, but you're thinking the apocalypse was in 2019. Yeah, well, we'll get to that, but it's interesting because when 5 lands, the Soviet Union is busy invading the United States. There's soldiers, you know, there's like war happening. and basically, like, it shows you the coolest thing because it shows like the entire Umbrella Academy, like, together fighting, you know, and you get to see
like
them
a superhero team. They have like their Avengers moment.
Yeah, they have their Avengers moment, and you get to see them all using their powers to like their full potential. And it's really awesome. Unfortunately, there's so much they can do because nukes land and, you know, basically blow up the planet at that point. But before that happens, Hazel appears and he pulls 5 out of that timeline, you know, basically like, I think he pulls them back about 10 hours before that happens.
No, it's more than 10 hours. It's 10 days, I think.
Oh yeah, it's 10 days. You're right.
Yeah. He pulls them back and tells them that,
I know it's like 10 something.
he's an older Hazel, and
yes.
he pulls 5 back and he says like 5's like, what about my family? He's like, well, you can't save them if you're dead.
Yeah.
And so he pulls them back like 10 days before, and now he's still the last of the Hargreaves to arrive, but he's there now, and then immediately Hazel just gets murdered by
not
the
before
Swedes,
Hazel,
who are kind of the new Hazel and Cha-Cha.
Yeah, the Swedes are the new assassins sent by the Commission, you know, and yeah, they kill Hazel not before Hazel slips 5 something, but basically you get to see this is 5's storyline for the season, is trying to figure out what causes the new apocalypse and trying to stop it, and also getting back to the future.
Kind of a retread of his story from season season 1, just kind of in a different setting with different circumstances, but same general idea. World's going to end in a few days. He has to figure out how,
he has to figure
and
out.
why.
World's going to end. He has to figure out how and why, and only he knows about it. The others are clueless.
Yeah, and again, they're all kind of divided. This time divided more just by the fact that rather than by them hating each other, which, there's still a bit of that, but rather than that, the reason they're divided is because they arrived at different times. They kind of, all, even though some of them have gone back to kind of check to see if anybody else has arrived, they haven't encountered any of themselves, any of each other, and they've all just kind of picked up different lives.
Yeah.
We could run through just kind of what they've been up to prior to the events of the show.
So I'm going to go in the order that you have in the notes here.
It's ordered by numbers, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, so number 1, Luther, he ends up being a fighter for Jack Ruby.
Yeah, so he's like doing manipulated fights for Jack Ruby, so like pretending to take a dive and then pulling out a win at the last moment, or doing things like that to like bring up the bets, typical mob boxing style.
Diego, immediately after realizing where he ended up, takes it upon himself that his mission is going to be to save Kennedy from being assassinated, and this apparently lands him into a mental institution, where he meets Lila Pitts, who is also a patient at the mental institution. And that gets real interesting real fast.
More on that later.
More on that later. Allison ends up getting involved in the civil rights movement. She ends up with a man who is, and I believe we have his name here. I know it's like Chestnut, something Chestnut.
Yeah, I have it written. Raymond Chestnut.
Yes, there it is. Raymond Chestnut, who is one of the local leaders of the local civil rights movement. She ends up becoming his love interest and getting involved.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I jokingly put down that all of the 7 kids have like a love interest in this season.
It seems that way.
It's just that Luther's love interest is his bromance with Jack Ruby, and Five's love interest is
what's Five's love interest? I don't know.
Is Future 5 or Old 5. It's himself.
It's himself. I like that. Klaus, however you want to pronounce it. Klaus. Okay. Klaus, he ends up leaving Dallas and going to San Francisco and becoming a cult leader.
Well, he kind of goes all around the world. They have like an episode where it shows he was like in India and he was like,
oh yeah.
So he just became a full-on guru cult leader.
Yeah. He basically leaves Dallas the first chance he gets. And then he only reluctantly goes back to Dallas because he's trying to run away from his cult he created.
Well, we find out a little bit more of a reason after that, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. We'll get to that. And then obviously
5,
number 5.
We've already touched on. He hasn't been there for a long time. He's kind of just arrived.
He's just arrived.
Ben is with Klaus, of course.
Obviously. Ben is still a ghost. Time travel did not make him not a ghost.
Yeah.
And Vanya, the white violin, when she lands, she this is interesting because she was in full on white violin mode when she time jumped. And so she kind of lands not really knowing who she is. And the first thing she does is in her like confusion about everything, kind of just runs in front of a car and gets adopted by this woman and her son into
and her
like
husband,
and her husband into like their farm life.
Yeah.
I guess.
So she ends up becoming like a live-in nanny helper for them as she's trying to figure out, who she is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what everyone's been up to for this time. And then 5 shows up and has to try to recruit them. He ends up noticing that somebody's kind of watching him. And we got kind of clued into that before 5 showed up, just because when we were seeing everybody show up one by one, we saw like one guy like happened to notice one of them in our time, then noticed another one, and then just seemed to kind of be noticing everybody showing up and taking an interest. And then 5 notices him. So the first thing 5 does after, Hazel dies and he gets away from that is he ends up finding this guy who's been spying on this alley and documenting it. He's like a conspiracy theorist, and he's got like a big, serial killer like yarn chart on his wall with like pictures of everybody that's showing up in the alley and, any information he's been able to get on them, And so so Five is able to kind of meet this guy, displays his powers a bit, and in doing so, like, basically the guy's like, you're an alien, right? Or something, and he jokingly says, well, the truth is out there.
Yeah.
Makes like a X-Files reference there. It's just funny. But then, yeah, so this ends up becoming like Five's ally in all of this, basically believing that he's an alien and that he's on a mission to reunite his family to save the world. So rather than correct him and fill him in on the actual situation, he just kind of goes with it and uses that to try to kind of track down everybody. And the first person he's able to get any information on is Diego, and that he's in an institution. So, he goes and he visits Diego, who's, you know, openly talking about how, you know, Kennedy's gonna be killed and stuff. And so everyone, you know, just thinks he's some nutty conspiracy theorist nut job, and nobody's like giving him kind of any attention. And so he's been locked up, and Five ends up approaching him and is trying to get him on board to kind of save the world. But Diego's like, okay, yeah, sure. But first we're going to save Kennedy and we're going to do this. And Five's like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're not saving Kennedy. This has nothing to do with that. We're trying to stop the end of the world. And Diego's like, oh, Kennedy. Like Diego's Kennedy obsession is like Luther's moon obsession from the first season.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's all Diego wants to do. Like, I don't even think Diego's on board with any of this stopping the apocalypse. He just wants to stop the Kennedy assassination. And basically Five is like, no, you know, just, you could stay here.
So he abandons him, you know, to stay in the mental institution with his new friend Lila.
Yes.
So, while that's happening, so he's looking to see if he can find somebody else. I think the second person he ends up finding is Luther. So he finds Luther working at Jack Ruby's club. In the meantime, everybody else is kind of starting to kind of get closer to running into each other as well. So it's not just Five finding him. They're like about to bump into each other anyway.
Right.
When Five goes and visits Luther, he tries to talk Luther into it. He's like, well, we got to save the world. And he's basically expecting Luther to be like, okay, I'm on board. But Luther's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, Luther's like, I don't care. Like, Luther is actually happy where he's at.
Yeah.
And doesn't want to do anything else.
Yeah. And he just wants to work for Jack Ruby, who he thinks is a great guy.
Yeah, for some reason.
He cares about Jack Ruby, so he gets into these fights, and then also works as his bodyguard. So he's just not going. So Five's getting kind of frustrated and pissed off at that. Meanwhile, some guy is like screaming at Jack Ruby about how the Soviets are trying to invade the country and stuff, some drunk guy. And then we find out where Vanya is with the family that's kind of adopted her. Sissy, the wife of the adopted family of hers, and gets like a phone call that's basically like saying that like, oh, her husband's like drunk at a club and he's causing trouble and they need to pick her up. She can't go, so Vanya's gonna go to pick him up because the mom can't go because their son is like kind of a special needs. He's like clearly on the spectrum. Right. And he starts to have kind of like a panic attack, and she can't leave him with Vanya. He wants his mom. He won't let go of her. So Vanya's like, I'll take her. I'll pick him up. So she goes down to pick him up. It's the same club that Luther and Five are at. Right. Vanya ends up picking him up. Luther sees her, is kind of like shocked. And then also, you know, he knows who the guy is because he was bugging Jack Ruby, and he picks up the wallet. So we have a scene not too long after that where he follows her to the barn, and he's got like a gun, and it looks like he's planning to like kill her or something, you know? But then when he goes out there, she's just kind of acting like she doesn't know him. And then he just kind of like takes his hand off the gun, like instead of drawing it on her, and goes into a whole thing where he's apologizing to her for everything that he did and stuff. But she doesn't understand what's going on because she's got like amnesia.
Right, exactly.
And he gets chased off by Sissy, who's got like a shotgun, saying, you know, what are you doing on my property? And he gives the wallet to her and stuff and says, oh, your husband dropped this. So that's kind of another reunion there, except Five doesn't even know about this. Again, the family is frustratingly not communicating with each other.
Right, exactly.
And then the kind of like the last like major reunion is with Allison and Klaus. So Klaus ended up getting himself thrown in jail because he stole a guy's truck on his way back towards Dallas.
That was a hilarious scene too.
Yeah, and he was playing poker.
Him playing poker because he was trying to get Ben to like Klaus's idea was like, he was going to use Ben to cheat at poker and steal this guy's truck through like winning. But like, Ben lied to him.
Yeah, Ben's just kind of pissed off at Klaus.
Yeah, Ben's pissed off at Klaus, so like Ben lied to him. And then it was like hilarious because then afterwards, like Klaus tried to use his ability to get Ben to like attack this guy when it looked like Klaus was going to get beat up. And Ben starts and then he just like stops and goes, nah.
So Klaus is like, oh shit, and just grabs the guy's keys and runs off.
Yeah, it just runs off.
He's able to steal the guy's truck, but ends up being arrested. Meanwhile, we talked about Allison getting involved in the civil rights movement and marrying a man who's also involved with the civil rights movement. He gets arrested, unfairly by the police at the time. And
all cops are bad.
Yeah. And
in all timelines.
Yeah. And so Klaus and Allison's husband end up having a conversation in the jail cell, like not knowing who each other are, And then Klaus gets kind of quickly released. Has a kind of like little cool moment where the Allison's husband's like, because he gets released because he knows like the governor. And he's like, well, if you talk to the governor again, you might want to tell him that, we're locked up here for no reason. Klaus is like, is that true? And the police are like, oh, I'm gonna move on or something.
Yeah. And I love it because like later on, like Klaus uses Ben to freak out the cops that are on duty, and basically he breaks Raymond out of jail.
Yeah. That happens a little bit later, but that doesn't, even with that encounter, he doesn't, even though Allison's in the precinct waiting for her husband to be released or to find out what's up with her husband being in jail in the first place anyways, even though she's there, Klaus doesn't run into her. I guess he gets taken out a different exit or something. So it's like they just, they're in the same place but completely miss each other. But once he is released, or once she talks to him, I should say, he says something that reminds her of Klaus. And so she ends up looking him up and seeing like, oh, he finds out he's like this cult leader, and looks him up, finds this mansion where he's at, and ends up encountering Klaus. And so they have like a reunion, kind of a sweeter reunion compared to the other ones. Give a nice big hug in the pool.
Like, I am all about Allison and Klaus's relationship this season. It's like probably one of the most pure relationships in the entire season.
Yeah. Klaus is like the best, I think.
Yeah, Klaus is I'm all about Klaus this season. Klaus is like the best because like,
he's just trying to be a good dude. He doesn't necessarily know how to do that well, but he's trying,
He's the only one who isn't cynical, you know? Yeah, he's just trying to be like a good person.
Yeah. Like he has this whole cult and stuff, but he didn't do it out of like selfish reasons and stuff. He just kind of ended up falling into it,
Right, exactly.
And he's been good to his people. It's just like once everybody became overly dedicated to him, he didn't take advantage of it. That's when he kind of started driving him away from it,
Right.
Which makes him a great character, fun to watch and stuff. But, so they end up reuniting that way. And later on, Luther ends up reuniting just because he sees her.
Yeah,
they run into each other after she gets in a big fight with her husband, and he had gone by. He had Jack Ruby look up information and found her husband, and it was great because he's like just getting depressed.
Yeah, well, he realizes Allison is married now, and that puts him into this deep depression because he was in love with Allison.
Yeah,
and Allison was in love with him.
So he just ends up eating.
Oh God, the scene where he's like in Allison and Raymond's house with Raymond, and he's just like eating the chocolates.
They've got some chocolates for Allison, and he's just eating them all because he's so depressed. There's actually a whole thing about how he was supposed to have like really let himself go and be like super depressed this season, but that they decided not to do that because of Fat Thor in Avengers Endgame.
Oh, really?
They didn't want to like seem like they were copying it, so they just didn't do that.
Yeah.
But like it's still pretty much the same kind of storyline, and you still get the overeating thing, and there's even like a fat joke like at one point where like when everybody gets in a car and he hops in the back and the whole car like slinks down. So they even make like a joke about that and stuff, but he's not actually, like we don't actually see him in like fat shape or anything. Like they decided not to do that. But yeah, so after that, like, Allison and her husband end up having a fight at some point, and she ends up encountering him just kind of on a whim, when he's like scarfing down food. And so they reunite. And by this point, kind of everybody's in contact with each other. Everybody's kind of approached Vanya again and gotten her back in on everything that's going on. She still doesn't have all of her memories, but she knows that she caused the apocalypse. Like, Luther ended up, I think, telling her, was it Luther that told her? I think it was Luther, like, Klaus didn't want to. Or not Klaus didn't want to. Five didn't want to, and then Luther
Luther ended up telling Vanya, like, the truth about what happened, and then Vanya kind of went back to Five and was like, what the heck? And, and Five, as blunt as usual, just said, like, I didn't want to tell you because, like...
I thought you were going to go crazy and blow up the world.
I thought you were going to go crazy and blow up the world.
Yeah, so kind of like everyone's kind of back together at this point, and now you're getting kind of back to the family squabbles that we've all had before.
Yeah. They get back together, but yeah, they start arguing a lot again.
Yeah.
And basically, like, at this point, like, they go their separate ways again, this time intentionally, just like kind of going back to, their lives, what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because being around each other is because they can't stand to be around each other.
Yeah. But their lives are falling apart now that they've re-encountered each other. So, like, Luther, because of his depression about, Allison having her husband now, basically just wants to get beaten in the ring, and so he gets beaten even though he's supposed to win. Screws over.
He's like, I want to feel the pain.
Yeah, but in doing so, he screws over Jack Ruby and ends his relationship with him, and can no longer live where he's living. So he ends up having to move in with Five and Elliot, the conspiracy theorist that they encounter. It's like all his old business. Diego, like, he had escaped from the mental institution with Lila, but that ends up becoming kind of a mixed bag because we end up finding out that Lila is actually...
We should talk about Lila. We should talk about Lila at this point. So Lila is interesting because Diego meets her as a patient at the mental institution, and they develop a sort of relationship from that. But Lila doesn't end up being who she's seeing. She's not actually like a patient at the institution. In fact, she's not actually from that timeline at all. It turns out that she is the daughter of last season's main antagonist, the handler. Who is plotting to take over the commission and rule over time. Apparently.
Well, she was like demoted. Her kind of boss, like in the organization, AJ Carmichael, who's like a goldfish in a goldfish tank on top of a human body.
Yeah.
Or a robot body, maybe, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so this figure, AJ, takes over the commission, demotes her to a lower position, and now she's scheming to get back into her position and to even have greater power, so that, get rid of the council that rules over and kind of take them out and be the main leader. So she starts scheming.
But Lila's relation to the handler, as we find out in the backstory, that the handler and the commission murdered her parents, and the handler adopted her as an orphan. And trained her in the commission.
Yeah, there's more to that, but we'll get to it later.
Yeah, there's more to get to later with that, but that's basically Lila's backstory. And so basically Lila is getting close to Diego because she is on a mission. Basically, the handler tells her mission is to protect Five at all costs.
Yeah. So they end up, she ends up kind of getting exposed a bit because Five just never trusts her from the very beginning. But then what really kind of sets it off is that there's a moment in which they're going to a party to try to...
Well, Five discovers... Yeah, we should explain why they're there. Because Five discovers a photograph of the grassy knoll.
Well, that's that film that...
that's that film that...
Hazel put in his pocket.
Slipped them, yeah. So he finds, he finds a picture of the grassy knoll on the day Kennedy is assassinated, and it's their father. It's Reginald Hargreaves standing on the grassy knoll.
The Umbrella Man, who's like an actual historical figure from the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, and they discover that that's Reginald Hargreaves, and basically this leads like that, like their father has something to do with the assassination, may have something to do with Doomsday, and so now Five is anxious to meet meet his daddy, you know, and basically he's part of like this secret cabal, the Majestic 12.
Yeah,
who
again,
is
like a historical, actual
right.
cabal.
Well, who like nobody knows who the members are, but 5 reasons out that their father is one of the members, and they're holding like this party, or at least Reginald is holding this party at this mansion, and that's where they decide they're going to go and meet him, and so that's why they're there.
Yeah, and so while they're there, they end up kind of they're trying to get in to communicate with their father to find out what's going on, but things go awry.
Diego has this moment because he meets Reginald's love interest, you know, like basically his mom, only it's not his mom because his mom was an android made in the likeness of this woman, so it's not really his mom. But Diego instantly identifies her as mom, and he turns into like a little boy again, and he just like approaches her, and she's like, are you okay? Like, she doesn't know what to make about it because he's like being so weird.
Yeah.
Well, that's
just
a big
Diego
moment.
in general, right?
Yeah, that's just Diego in general. Yeah, but then they get attacked by the Swedes, and basically Diego and number 5 get attacked by the Swedes. They're both fighting separately, like different ones. And Lila shows up, and it looks like they're both losing the battle. But since her mother told her mission was to protect 5 at all costs, she kind of like leaves Diego to fend for himself, and she goes and like fights off the one attacking 5. And Diego eventually like ends up getting the better of his Swede, you know, but it's like after that, like, yeah, that's where the whole charade falls down, because like after they get out, like Reginald drives off and they miss him. And basically 5 just calls out Lila in front of Diego and everything, and basically spells it out because 5's already figured everything out. Yeah. And Lila like turns to Diego, and Diego's like, you know what? You know, he's kind of like on 5's side, because he's like, yeah, you know, you did go out your way to save 5, and you left me to fend for myself. And she kind of like tries to use the excuse, well, 5's just a kid, and Diego's not buying it. He's just like, no, sorry.
Yeah, he doesn't believe it. She runs back to her mom. She confirms that she saved 5, but that she also ended up getting one of Diego's knives.
Yes.
And gave it to her mom. We find her mom ends up setting like a trap for the Swedes. Makes it look like Diego said it, because she's trying to set the Swedes on Diego. Yeah. Part of her machination. She leaves the knife behind in a tree, and as they approach it, there's a pressure plate with a bomb, and one of the Swedes goes boom.
Yep, blows up.
Yep, and so now they see the knife, and they think that, okay, this is the Umbrella Academy doing this, and particularly Diego. They end up going to where they live, and they end up killing Elliot, the conspiracy theorist.
This is after, because you skipped the important part between that. So after their brother blows up and they find the knife, they're basically like trying to figure out what they should do. They don't know like where to look. And then like they're like in a steam bath, and then that's when the handler shows up, and she basically tells them where like Diego is staying. She says she just wants him to leave 5 alive, and that's it. Yeah, she just says just leave 5 alive, and you know, she'll give him the information. And that's when they find out where he's staying. That's where they find, you know, that's where they do that. Yeah.
So they kill Elliot. They leave a message behind that says like Oga for Oga, which is like Swedish for eye for an eye.
Yeah, it's
just a hilarious scene where
Luther
and Diego are trying to crack the case.
Well, like, yeah, and like Diego like looks in the phone book for an Oga.
Oga for Oga.
Oga for Oga, and like calls this person, you know, apparently, and it's like, I will find you and I will kill you myself. And then 5 shows up, and 5's like, Oga for Oga. That means an eye for an eye in Swedish. And Diego's just like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
That was just funny. The whole scene was funny because they were so proud of themselves for figuring it out, that it was a person's name, and that they were gonna look up like the person just writes their name. Like
a person just like murders somebody and then writes their name in that person's blood, so anybody can go find them.
Yeah, it just shows how stupid they are. Like, it just shows, and when Five explains it to him, you just see the exasperation in his face.
Right.
The actor who plays Five does such a great job for a young actor to just really be the adult in the room.
Yeah,
this family with people that are actual adults.
Oh my God, he does an amazing job. Like, seriously.
He's just so frustrated with them. It's so funny.
Certainly if that Five goes after Lila, they get into a fight and Five gets the best of Lila, but then the handler shows up and the handler basically tells Five that she wants Five to kill the board of directors for her. The board of directors of the commission for her. And she basically tells Five, if he does that for her, she'll get him and his family back 2019 and there won't be any apocalypse.
Yeah, they'll cancel both apocalypses.
Yeah.
And give him a briefcase to get his whole family back to 2019 and that's it. She'll be back in control. And he does it. He goes and he wipes out the whole council.
Another great scene.
Except for AJ the fish.
Yeah, except for AJ the fish, who he keeps as a fish. But yeah, that's another great scene where he just picks up an axe and he goes full psycho, but he's just like teleporting around, like just chopping people up. Like, God, it's brutal. I mean, Jesus Christ. We can see the full deaths. Like number 5 said, like, he has been an assassin for the commission, but yeah, he is a deadly assassin because he does not even think twice about doing what he's doing.
Yeah, he just murders them all, except AJ, who he wasn't commissioned to kill. He was supposed to bring the fish back to the handler, and he does, like Sans body, so it's just the goldfish without the mechanical body.
Yeah, without the body. So, the handler's idea of schadenfreude.
Yeah, the handler was keeping the fish on her desk. As she goes and takes over the commission and starts ruling it with an iron fist, she takes back her office and has the fish sitting on her desk.
She gets more and more flamboyant about it as well as the episodes go on. Like she gets like this really elaborate like outfit for herself. Like it's insane.
Yeah, so she takes over. It's like, you see like one of the people's like, wait, why is she in charge? She was under me. Like, wait a minute, if the whole commission died, how did she at a low rank all of a sudden be in charge of the whole thing? What's going on?
Right, exactly.
But everyone's so like, most of the people there are so like spineless that she just kind of just takes right over, like just nobody questions it. So now she's controlling that. She gives Lila like a badge to be like the head of security for their whole thing. And Lila says, well, then I can hire the people I want. And she immediately goes to recruit
Diego.
Because
it turns out, like, through her actions, Lila actually fell in love with Diego.
Yeah.
And Diego actually fell in love with her.
So she abducts Diego and teleports back to the Time Commission with him, puts him in orientation. Is like, this will be great. Just stay here, go through orientation, you'll work for me, and we'll be together. And he's like, yeah, okay. And then he starts to sit through the orientation, but just takes off and wanders around the building. And he ends up finding the room where they check kind of prophecies and everything to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, the infinite switchboard.
Yeah, and so he wants to see what goes on with the JFK assassination. He wants to see it from all angles so he can look around. And he ends up seeing oh wait, JFK isn't assassinated, but as he's driving away, a federal building just goes kaboom, just collapses. And this is what initiates the war between America and Russia that leads to the end of the world that Five saw at the beginning.
The federal building explodes and Vanya floats out.
Yeah, but it's attributed to the Russians is why, why it triggers World War, because they believe it's the Russians. He sees it's Vanya.
So Diego's like, oh crap, it happened again.
Yeah, realizing, oh shit, so I guess we caused this by showing up here,
And I guess that's
the bomb again.
I guess that's a good jumping off point to talk more about Vanya's story throughout the season, because I feel like she's more detached from everything that's going on with everybody else than most. But
she's got amnesia, she's got this second chance at life, and she's living this small life on this farm with this couple and this kid on the spectrum.
This kid on the spectrum, but there's a complication because she falls in love with the wife, and she falls in love with Vanya. And that causes tension, especially with the woman's ultra-conservative husband.
Who's also just a fucking asshole.
Yeah, it's just an asshole. Sissy is the name of
it's Sissy and Carl.
Of the housewife, and Carl is the husband. Carl.
And Harlan is the kid on the spectrum.
Yeah.
So she's kind of dealing with this. She ends up, as she's dealing with this, she's also ends up refinding her family and learning stuff. But she doesn't get her memories back, but she learns like who her family is and stuff.
Yeah, she learns who her family is. This storyline comes to a head when she convinces Sissy, basically when Five tells her that she needs to get her shit together because they're leaving. This is when after Five completed his mission for the handler, she gives him the briefcase and tells him he has 90 minutes to use it. And so Five's struggling to get everybody together at the alley where they all landed in within 90 minutes so that he can take them all back to 2019. And this causes Vanya's story to go to a head because Vanya's trying to convince Sissy to go with her to 2019.
Yeah, Sissy and Harlan to come with her.
Yeah, so Vanya, Sissy, and Harlan, Sissy ends up agreeing to it, and so they try to run away with Harlan. And apparently, the cops show up. I think one of the cops is Sissy's brother-in-law.
You're a little bit out of order there.
Yeah.
So, first what ends up happening is that Sissy, and this is important to the thing, is that they get into an argument and the kid runs away. Harlan runs away and ends up drowning.
Yeah. I can't believe I forgot. That's super important. Yeah, because Harlan runs away and ends up drowning.
And then Vanya, uses her powers to kind of clear the lake, grab him, and she's trying to resuscitate him. And at one point, while trying to kind of breathe some air into his system, you see little particles go floating down into his body.
She ends up transferring her power into Harlan.
Yeah.
And reviving
power into him, and it revives him. Then we get to the whole point where they're trying to drive away and some cops are blocking the way, and it turns out that the reason why is because Sissy ended up calling her husband to apologize and tell him that she was leaving, and Carl's brother is on the police, so Carl calls his brother to stop them. This goes into a whole confrontation. Vanya ends up using her powers, but ends up getting attacked from behind by one of the police officers, and they abduct her. She wakes up in the FBI.
In the FBI building.
Yeah, where they believe that she's a Russian spy.
The one that explodes.
Yes.
So yes, they believe she's a Russian spy, and they try to interrogate her using electric shock. But this just sends her into this state where she's trapped in this version of her youth with all her siblings at the table and Reginald trying to force her to eat this brain and remember everything.
Yeah. Well, before they did the electric shock, they gave her LSD.
Yeah, that's true. They gave her LSD. Yeah.
So she's tripping.
Yeah. So she's tripping. And the problem is she's also saying off her powers as she's tripping.
Yeah. So she's getting her memories back, and the trauma of her memories is causing her to lose control.
Yeah.
And so she's completely losing control. And then as she's losing control, they're trying to kill her with they have her wired up to this electricity to kind of use it both as a punishment for when she's not being cooperative, but also so that they can kill her if she tries to use her powers. And they crank it up to try to kill her, but it's not working. And somehow it's spreading over the link between her and Harlan, because you get cuts back to Harlan on the farm and he's shaking as she's being electrocuted,
Because it turns out Harlan is connected to her now.
Yeah. And she's just kind of she's unconscious, but her powers are going out of control, and it basically killed everybody on the floor, at least. They're all pressed up on the ceiling with blood coming out of their eyes, They're all dead. Her siblings, led by Diego, who said that, now knows where she is and what's happening with her, are going to try to kind of save her. It's Diego, Klaus, and Allison who are trying to save her. Klaus gets gets the closest to her before he gets knocked out. And then Ben takes over. So Ben goes and is able to approach her because he's not affected by it. He can just walk through her stuff because he's a ghost. So he walks through and he goes into Vanya's mind and communicates with her.
Yeah, Ben is the only one who can actually break the barrier and communicate with Vanya. And it's such a sweet reunion too.
Yeah, exactly. Ben's like, probably of all of the kids, Klaus is well, but Klaus has his own rough edges because of his own trauma, but Ben is like probably the sweetest of all of the siblings, He's
Right.
the one that, like, when we saw in the past when he would use his powers and had to like kill people, he hated it, he like didn't want to do it, and he would come out all kind of shaken by it and stuff. He didn't want to do that and stuff, and he was basically forced to. He was always like a sweet kid. And so then he ended up having to, when he died and stuff, he's just been kind of frustrated living in Klaus's head, dealing with Klaus this whole time, and basically having Klaus be the only person he can communicate with, because Klaus won't allow him to communicate with anybody else. Like, Klaus will just straight up tell, like, their family members, oh yeah, ghosts can't travel through time, so Ben's not here. And Ben's like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah, Ben's like, dude, what the fuck? Yeah. Yeah, like, Klaus is so mean to Ben this season.
Yeah.
But while we're on the subject of Ben, like, I guess we should talk about, like, the one scene he had where he, like, possesses Klaus, and he gets to, like, experience, like, being alive again through Klaus, and he gets to talk to, like, his crush, because among, like, Klaus's cult members, like, Ben developed a crush on this one woman. And so you said, like, at the time, you said everybody gets a love interest, and that's true, because even Ben gets a love interest, despite being a ghost.
one of Klaus's followers, Jill.
Yeah.
Who Ben falls in love with, like, just watching her when they're on, like, the bus heading to San Francisco, and just different times in which his followers are there, like, And so that's why when we talked about Ben being upset with Klaus and not helping him win the fight, it's because Klaus was running away from San Francisco, where Jill was. And Ben wanted to be around Jill because he was in love with her.
Yeah, and so at the end there, when Ben is with Vanya, it's so bittersweet because, like, Ben's basically tells Vanya he's ready to move on.
Well, he's, like, basically being forced to move on. Like, he's not going to be able to return. He's like, the electricity or whatever and being inside Vanya is basically destroying his ghost.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't read it that. I thought he was, like, willingly moving on, but I guess
no, that's why there was, like, spots of light, like, opening up on him and stuff.
Oh,
like, he was, like, being destroyed, basically. She was, like, crying about him, being forced to move on, and he's like, no, it's okay, just tell Klaus something for me. But we had like a whole scene before where like you were talking about, that came to head with, he was able to possess Klaus, and he was able to kind of like approach his love interest and have a conversation with her and flirt with her. And then she's like, you want to have sex?
Yes.
And he gets like all excited. And then as like they're getting ready and everything to do that, that's when like he ends up basically like he has to go at that point. But he's like trying to kind of put it off, and he's like, and Klaus is trying to kind of like kick him out of his body. And it's like all this stuff's kind of coming to a head at the same time. And he ends up finding out that like basically he's like, I'm a virgin or something. He tells her in Klaus's mind. She's like, what are you talking about? We already had sex with like a group of like 4 other people.
Yeah.
Because of course, Klaus just fucks whatever moves, So Ben ends up having to leave, isn't able to fulfill his losing his virginity, his ghost virginity, and ends up like basically dying, I guess, in Vanya's head, like disappearing and not being able to come back. And she conveys the message to Klaus from Ben that Ben had been, it wasn't Klaus that kept Ben from moving on, that Ben was too scared to move on. And so that relieves like one of Klaus's traumas, I guess. But now Vanya's back. They get her out of there. She's back in control of herself. The FBI headquarters like messed up. That now the entire Umbrella Academy is basically on the news now because everyone's been tied together, and so they're all looking for them. And there's police information about a Russian spy, and the FBI headquarters it didn't get blown up, but like all the people were killed in it, and all of these suspects are around. So now they're like basically they have to leave.
I love how the media plays it. Like, the media villainizes every one of them. Like, Vanya's a Russian spy. Obviously Allison is like a troublemaker, part of,
civil rights movement, yeah.
Part of the civil rights movement.
Luther with ties to a local mob man, or.
Yeah, Luther with ties to the local mafia.
Diego's dangerous psychopath escaped.
No, they didn't say that. They said Diego is is a Cuban who escaped from a mental institution. Like they specifically like call him out as a Cuban just because like we had like tensions with Cuba, and like Diego's like Cuban. That's interesting.
Yeah, a cult leader, Klaus, you know.
Yeah, Klaus is like a cult leader, and then like and then it's funny because they showed like picture of 5, but they said like he's a child who has apparently been kidnapped by these people.
Which is funny, yeah. And then we should say that while everything was going on with Vanya and the FBI building, there was a hilarious moment where now that they missed their window to travel back because everybody kind of got distracted by other things and wasn't able to show up to Five's consternation, he figures out that the only way he can get back is by getting the briefcase from his older self, who had teleported, who had gone back in time in season 1, in the first episode of season 1, was from the Kennedy assassination that he had done. So he knows that he's got a briefcase, and that he doesn't take the briefcase when he goes back in time to his family, which means that they can take that briefcase and still restore time. But Five has to go through all these machinations in order to confront him, because there's a whole thing, there's a whole syndrome if you encounter yourself in a different time.
And what makes this better is Five decides to take Luther with him as his spotter. Yeah. It's so great. But yeah, run down the syndrome, because this is great.
I don't have it in front of me, like all the things, but it's just like there's a bunch of stages, including things like flatulence and uncontrollable urination and itchiness.
It's itchiness, flatulence, and the last one is like it's increased paranoia, and then like
psychotic rage or something.
Homicidal rage.
Yeah. So Luther makes the introduction to talk to the older version of Five, or I guess younger, but an older body version of Five, to talk to him and introduce him to the younger Five so that they can negotiate for the briefcase. And immediately they start becoming paranoid, like the Fives are like working against each other.
Yeah, immediately the Fives are plotting against each other.
And Luther, just being an idiot, is just kind of like caught in the middle of both.
Yeah, Luther is caught in the middle. They're both trying to manipulate Luther to work for them. And it's funny because like the older Five, or I guess, well, technically the younger Five, but the old man Five, let's just say, basically at one point convinces Luther to go with his plan, because he says, the young Five is like an accidental mutant who doesn't need to exist, you know.
Yeah, he's all I go back in time in my regular body. We get back there, we make nice with Vanya, stop the apocalypse there, and everything's done.
Yeah, and everything's done.
And he's all, what about the other Five? And he's all, well, we just kill him. He's not important.
He's just kill him. He's like a third nipple.
Yeah. So Luther just keeps going back and forth, getting knocked back and forth between the two of them. They end up having a big fight on behind the fence on the grassy knoll or whatever, the Kennedy assassination, awesomely set to the song "Dancing with Myself."
Yes. And again, we haven't touched upon this, but again, like the music is on point this season.
Yeah.
Like so many good scenes.
Not even just that, but just like the lyrics, because like Klaus as a cult leader is just spouting off like lyrics to songs.
Oh, I know. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Yeah. And his cult is called Destiny's Children.
Yes.
It's just really funny. So yeah, so it's just like all these. So there's again, music is on point with the Umbrella Academy. This is like James Gunn level of being on point with music.
Pretty much.
Trying to think what else we need to cover. Okay, so let's go through the series and then like the rest of what happens, and then backtrack to a few things that we've skipped.
Okay, yeah.
So, but let's finish off first. So,
because like the last episode gets pretty wild.
Yeah. So the FBI, everybody's after the entire Umbrella Academy now. They've managed to knock the old Five back in time, to fulfill what he needed to do in season 1, but the briefcase was destroyed, so they don't have the briefcase anymore. And so they're trying to figure out what to do. Vanya finds out something's wrong with Harlan. I forgot exactly how she found out. I don't think she got a call. I think it was she felt it or something. I don't know.
Well, they're connected.
Yeah.
Like they made it pretty clear that they're connected to each other. Yeah. So it's through that connection that she finds out.
I just don't remember what exactly happened. But anyway, she realizes something's wrong with Harlan.
She just sees like a flash of Harlan in, like a psychic, it's a psychic like flash. She just sees it. And then she decides decides to go out.
So she convinces her, she's like, I need to go save him. And everybody's kind of like, just like, no, I can't go with you, sorry. Like, for all their different reasons. And she's just kind of like depressed, like, what the fuck? And so she takes off. Klaus ends up jumping in the seat with her and going like, well, I'm coming too. And it's kind of like a real sweet moment that everybody ends up joining her in the car.
Yeah, everybody. And it's funny because, the fat joke for Luther comes when he gets in the back and, like, weighs down the car.
The whole bottom sags down, is scraping.
And he actually says, like, nobody make a fat joke.
Yeah, if anybody makes a fat joke, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So they go to the farm, they make it there, and Vanya is gets through to
trying to calm Harlan down,
Yeah, because he's got like a storm basically spinning above their farm.
Yeah, he's
with the power.
He is in full on Vanya mode.
Yeah, just a complete disaster storming around him, and he's like encased in the power, and she can get through because she has the same power. So she gets through and is
of course, since this is basically the last hour of the season, this is where everything comes to a head because the handler and Lila show up as well to kill the Umbrella Academy. Oh, and I should mention this because this is important because after Diego leaves the commission to save the world with his family, Lila finds out from the handler. Well, the one agent there, the short one with the glasses, he catches wind of like this file from AJ Carmichael, who's like the goldfish, who's like basically using the rocks in his goldfish bowl to like send out a message. And the guy sees it and he goes and gets the file and he gives it to Lila, and the file concerns the murder of Lila's parents. And apparently the file says that number 5 did the killing.
Did also say real quickly that this was the last thing AJ was able to do before the handler opened up her jaw and swallowed him whole.
Yes, she kills him after that. That was the last straw apparently. But Lila confronts the handler about this, and basically Lila tells the handler that, she has resolved to kill number 5 now,
but he says that number 5 is the one that actually killed her family.
Yeah, it says
and it was
number
on
5.
AJ's orders.
Yeah, it was on AJ's orders. So Lila believes that number 5 is solely responsible for the death of her parents, so she resolves to kill him, but then the handler tries to manipulate things because she's like, well, what about Diego? And she's like, yeah, what about him? He had nothing to do with it. He's like, are you sure? I'm pretty sure, number 5 he knows about it, and number 5 has been manipulating him. Mm-hmm. You should kill Diego too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as all this is happening at the farm, they finally get the kid calmed down. The handler and Lila show up and show down with them, and they're like, well, we can take you on. And then she's like, well, do you think I didn't bring backup?
I should say, now, the handler and Lila, now a newly murderous, vendetta-ridden Lila.
Mm-hmm.
They show up. And they brought backup.
They brought, the entire agency, basically, all of the assassins for the agency.
Yeah.
All zap in with their briefcases, and they're going to take them on, and now the Umbrella Academy is trying to take them on, and you get to see them using their abilities in different ways. And this is how they kind of learn how to use more of them.
You get to see Diego's true ability, which you can kind of have guessed at it before. If you were
not from season 1, but the beginning of season 2.
The beginning of season, even season 1, I would argue, if you were clever about what was happening, what was really happening when Diego, threw those knives, then you could kind of have sussed it out. But yeah, we find out that Diego's power isn't throwing knives real good. It's using kinetic energy to manipulate objects. So when he's throwing his knives, he's hitting his target because he's using the kinetic energy to guide it. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a scene where they're firing a hail of gunfire, and he's able to stop it all.
Yeah.
Redirect some of it. Luther isn't too terribly much use. Just being strong.
But Vanya is the most useful.
Oh yeah, she ends up basically almost single-handedly wiping out the entire forces, or pretty much single-handedly.
Yeah, she vaporizes everybody pretty much.
Yeah.
Except for Lila and the handler, because there is something about Lila that nobody knew up until now.
She has the same powers as Vanya, apparently.
Oh,
and
she
actually
goes,
more so. But
yeah, actually
initially
more so.
it's like, wait a minute, she's doing the same stuff as Vanya. That's all we see at first.
Yeah, that's all we see.
And she uses the powers back against them, and now they're kind of on the run.
Lila actually has all the powers of the Umbrella Academy.
Or something akin to that. Like, she can use them against them. Like, there's a point where Allison tries to rumor her, and she cuts her off and says, Allison's like, I heard a rumor that, and then
she cuts
Lila interrupts, she can't breathe.
Yeah, and Allison started, so I think what's going on is because Lila doesn't use an ability until it's used against her, so I think Lila's ability is more like copycat.
Yeah, kind of, she can use back abilities that were used on her. This is one of the things I didn't like so much about it.
Right.
I hate that power.
Oh, I know.
I hate it.
A cheap power.
It shows up in everything.
Like
it shows up in Heroes,
obviously.
it showed up in Heroes like 6 times, like with different people.
Yeah, there was at least like 2 major characters who had the same ability, It's like, come on.
But
the same copycat ability.
But the other thing that really annoys me about it in this case is that I think the Umbrella Academy did a good job about the training of those powers.
Right.
Like, even Vanya, who has like the least control of her powers, she was trained to be a musician, and her power revolves around sound. And so that's like she has like trained ability in her that allows her to use her powers effectively. Like, that's why she's so powerful with her powers, because she's a musician.
I think we're supposed to like interpret it as like the handler trained Lila in her powers. But
I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't know. But it does make a good, like, kind of like, what the fuck, like, twist at the end.
Yeah.
Because we find out that Lila was one of the children born on that same day in 1989 that Reginald Hargreaves didn't adopt. Because, like I said, like they said in the first season, there's like at least 45 kids or something that was born on that day. And Reginald only ended up with 7. So you gotta wonder what happened to the rest of them. And apparently, like, it's revealed that the handler, if not just her, like, was actively trying to track down some of these kids that weren't adopted and trying to adopt them into the commission, and that's why she had Lila's parents murdered, and why she was like actually there, because number 5, he admits to doing the assassination, but then he tries to reason with Lila by telling her, do you know how often the handler goes on missions herself? Like, why would she have been there? Think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get Lila to kind of second guess things a little bit, and that's like the only thing that basically saves them. And then the guy, from right as it's looking like things might be kind of peaceful on the situation, the last remaining Swede, we should mention, we talked about one of his brothers dying. The other one got killed by Allison, who forced him to kill his own brother.
Yeah, when they were attacking Allison and her husband, and they were basically going to kill her husband until Allison rumored like, I guess the main one. It's hard to, they don't have names. This is difficult.
It's Mo.
Schmo.
It's Mo from they have names, but I didn't end up copying them down because just the Swedes was.
I don't recall like learning their names.
I'm just saying Mo, like as in the Three Stooges.
Yeah, Mo. She rumors Mo into murdering Larry and with his own hands, and this kind of fucks Mo up even more. But before he shows up, because they show him he's on his way to the farm, but before he shows up, they show and we should also say that while she is there, the handler is also she's trying to get Harlan now to join the commission. She's trying to take him away because she sees his powers, and so she's basically, yeah, you can come and we'll train you and take care of you. But so when Diego is talking to Lila and basically getting her to see reason and to see the situation, as soon as things it looks like Diego got through, everything looks to calm down, the handler walks in and murders everybody.
Yeah.
He just shoots everybody dead, including Lila. Lila confronts her. And she's like, everything they told me is true, isn't it? And the handler just responds by shooting Lila in the stomach and letting her bleed out.
Yeah.
And that's when the last remaining Swede walks in and murders the handler.
Yeah.
Because basically what had happened was, after he killed his brother, because he was rumored to do it, he doesn't focus on Allison. he focuses his anger on the handler because he remembers her, what she said, Lavender. There's this point where like it echoes, he's like Lavender. And that's his target at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he kills her at the end. While 5 is dying, 5 is kind of like remembering like what the conversation he had with Reginald earlier in the season about what Reginald told him about time travel. And how like he should try to do time travel in smaller increments of time rather than these huge time jumps. And he uses that advice to basically go back just a few minutes before the handler walked in and shot everybody.
Yeah.
And so that he can stop her from killing him and his family. And he does it.
And the Swede still ends up killing the handler.
Yeah, the Swede still ends up killing her.
But, 5 ends up coming to an agreement that that's enough.
Yeah, he just
there
says,
doesn't need to be any more.
He just says enough. There doesn't need to be any more. And the Swede just stops and just says enough and walks away.
Yeah. And so then Lila kind of at the last minute, I think Luther was trying to kind of go after her to stop her, and Diego stops Luther, and then Lila ends up getting away with the briefcase.
Yeah, she takes the handler's briefcase and basically jumps away, and so we don't know if Lila's going to be a future antagonist. Probably. Most likely.
Luther's like, why did you stop me? And Diego said, because I love her.
Yeah, because I love her.
So now it's not just Luther that has incest issues with his
with his sister. It's Diego.
Yeah.
As Alison pointed out, they're not biological.
Yeah.
But I love that because Alison is like, technically it's not incest. We're not biological. And I love that Klaus is like, when you have to use the word technically, it's pretty bad.
So that's kind of the end of the big conflict. And so
we get to the epilogue, which I love the epilogue because it kind of shows like what happens to certain various characters. Like it shows like the Swede, the last remaining Swede. He gets picked up by Klaus's cult.
Yeah.
Vanya's trying to convince Sissy and Harlan to come to 2019 with her. Sissy basically tells Vanya that she can't, she wants to stay in 1963 and that she's moving to San Francisco.
Yeah, so she takes, Harlan and is driving away with him. And
yeah,
you
we
see him.
That he still has powers, even though supposedly Vanya took the powers away from him, but she didn't fully do that, we see.
Yeah, so he's got some kind of a power ability. He's spinning a wooden sparrow around his toy that he always has on him. In the air above his hand. So it's much more controlled than before, so.
We see this wasn't in the last episode. I think this is the episode before, but we do see after the assassination of Kennedy, we do see Reginald Hargreaves. He confronts the Majestic 12 and he's basically like, the assassination of the president wasn't in the deal that I agreed to, and they're basically like, well, tough shit, because that's what we wanted.
And he's like, well, then you get no more from me. And then they're like, what do you mean? We're going to get whatever we want from you.
Yeah, they're going to get whatever we want from you.
That was the last straw.
That was the last straw. And then we find out who Reginald Hargreaves really is. Well, not who. We still don't know. But we get to see what he is.
He's Rainbow Bright from My Little Pony.
We see he's not human. He is definitely something extraterrestrial, maybe extra dimensional.
Yeah.
He is some creature and he ends up murdering the rest of the Majestic 12.
Yeah, he takes off his face and you see just kind of from behind like an alien head, and then he murders the rest of the Majestic 12.
Yeah.
So we get kind of bits of closure on everything going on there. But then we end up back in the present in 2000, or not, I guess not the present anymore, in 2019.
April 2nd, 2019. One day after the apocalypse.
Yeah. So they end up, they're back there. The apocalypse never happened. They're like, oh, we did it. The apocalypse didn't happen. This is great. And they're going around and they're checking that they're in the Umbrella Academy mansion. And then Diego notices, he's like, why is there a portrait of Ben? Because there used to be a portrait of 5 up on the wall and there's a portrait of Ben instead.
And they see their father, Reginald Hargreaves, is alive. He's there and Luther is like, Dad, you're alive. alive? And he's like, yes, why wouldn't I be?
And they're all like, no reason.
Yeah, there's no reason. And then Luther's just like, well, it's good to be home. And then Reginald said, this isn't your home. You don't belong here. And they're like, what? And they're like, but yeah, but this is the home of the Umbrella Academy. Reginald's like, Umbrella Academy? This is the Sparrow Academy. And then they look and there's like all these like shadowy figures of like these young people. And then the one steps out of the shadows and it's Ben.
Yeah, with emo hair.
With emo hair, yeah. Which sets up some interesting setup for next season.
Like, how did he get into emo?
Yeah, how did he get into emo?
Who's his hairstylist?
Was it too much simple plan?
Yeah. Who's his hairstylist?
Yeah, who's his hairstylist?
How does he deal with split ends? So many questions that need answers.
So many questions.
And so that's it. Yeah. So we have like another Umbrella Academy, or this time the Sparrow Academy, which is interesting because there's sparrows hidden throughout this entire season, including the toy that Harlan was playing with as a sparrow.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another cool thing this season we didn't touch on is like we got to see the origin of Pogo.
Yeah, that was really cool. We got to see him as like a space test monkey that was sent into outer space, and he came back to Earth in rough shape. And you also see the origin of that, or not the origin, but we see another use of that same serum that was used to save Luther. They gave him like an 8 body.
Yeah. So they gave Pogo the serum that healed him and also made him super
slightly
intelligent.
Human. Yeah,
slightly human. And we see that like Reginald and his girlfriend like adopted Pogo as sort of like their own child, you know?
Yeah, they had kind of like a makeshift family between the three of them.
Yeah,
like where Pogo would draw like pictures basically of their family together, and you got to see kind of this family unit aside of Hargreaves that we never saw. He never showed that kind of softness to the Umbrella Academy, you know?
Yeah, he never showed that softness to the Umbrella Academy. Yeah, it's like a completely different side of him that we see. And it's funny too because it totally runs counter to what he tells Luther when Luther's like describing his backstory, you know, like what he did when he got to Dallas. The first thing he does is he seeks out his dad. He gets on a Greyhound bus and he goes and he meets his dad. And that's when Reginald tells him, you know, like, I despise children. I would never have children. And even if I did, I wouldn't have 8 children as filthy as you. You know?
We saw a lot of like Reginald Hargreaves being a total fucking asshole.
Yeah.
to his kids in this. That scene, we also had a scene that was really sad where Diego was they had like a whole dinner where he had invited them all to dinner, and Diego like confronted him on something, and he basically talked Diego down so bad that Diego started stuttering again.
Yeah.
And it just completely broke him down, and it kind of ruined Diego for the thing too, because Diego, like prior to that, had finally kind of like gotten along with his siblings again and kind of pulled them into the idea of like, no more numbers. We're all zero. This is,
we're team
all
zero
together.
now.
We're in on this together. And then he got dressed down so badly and nobody stood up when that happened. So like when they were leaving, he was like, so much for Team Zero.
Yeah.
So that was really sad seeing him kind of like finally kind of get his shit together and then just be completely abandoned and dressed down in such a rough ride, you know, and using the stuttering as a mechanism to show like how much that ruined him was kind of cool.
We got to see how Allison ended up meeting Raymond Chestnut, you know, like after she arrives in Dallas, she gets, you know, assaulted by these 3 men and she ends up running into the beauty parlor.
Yeah, the beauty parlor she ended up working at when we first saw her this season.
Yeah.
And she runs in there, and as all these men are coming in chasing her, it's like a black beauty parlor. So like all the women there are like, I think you might be in the wrong part of town, to the boys that were chasing her.
Scissors and like a heating iron, you know, like basically like, they chase them off. And like that's where Allison ends up meeting Raymond.
Because they're having a meeting there of like a civil rights group is having a meeting there, and she encounters him there. Yeah. And at this point she's like not talking. And she says what is apparently the first word since Vanya slit her throat, which is just her own name. Because he asks, what's your name or something. She says it, she kind of like croaks it out. She's like, Allison.
Yeah.
And that's apparently like the first thing she said since then. As she mentioned that she hadn't used her ability at all the entire time she was in the past. And she doesn't use it until she has to save Raymond from being basically beaten up by a police officer.
Not beaten up, beaten to death.
Yeah.
Like he was going to kill her and she uses his power, but this causes a rift between her and Raymond because now he's not trustful of her. He doesn't know what to make of her.
Well, she takes him out for a trip around the town where she's like using his power to show off and impress him. And he's actually kind of getting into it, but then you start to see the reasons why her power is not good for her and how she kind of got like addicted to it and was going too far with it. And he kind of freaked out. And then that, it hurt the relationship again because it hurt it initially. He's like, what did you whisper to him to make him stop? What did you do? And at first he thought that she was like a spy for the government or something.
Yeah, because like he says, what did you do? And she kind of like just says, oh, I just asked him, to stop. And he's like, ain't no white cop gonna walk away just because a black woman asked him to stop.
Yeah. So he thinks it's because she's like a spy for the CIA or something, going against the civil rights movement. And so he's kind of like upset with her. And then when she finally does reveal the whole truth about her powers, takes him out for that trip around town, a whirlwind trip that ends with her going too far with things. Yeah. And then he starts to second guess her again because he's like, wait, did you ever use this ability on me? And she's like, no. And he's like, but if you did, I wouldn't know, would I?
Right.
And so it's causing a lot of kind of division between them.
But speaking of that, like at the end of the epilogue, it does show Raymond reading this letter Allison sent him. That was basically like Allison like saying, like she loves and appreciates him and she's sorry that, she had to go back to the future and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I'm trying to think of anything else we really need to cover.
I think that covers all the major points. I can't really think of anything else that we didn't touch upon.
Yeah, like I said, my biggest issue is there's a or not phenomenon really, but a trope in writing called Deus Ex Machina. And the idea is that it means God in the machine, and basically it's when the plot saves a character through some kind of unexplainable means, like something suddenly happens and it rescues all of our characters so that they can progress in the story. And it's not really well explained or well done usually. And they call that a Deus Ex Machina because it's like you put the God in the machine of the writing to say, okay, so this is going to happen for this reason, just because we need these characters to have this necessary amount of plot armor to get through the situation because we need something else to happen. And it's usually used as like a way of like saving protagonist in a way that's unrealistic and people get frustrated with that. I think there's kind of an opposite situation as well, which is where you try to like up the ante on a villain by having them suddenly be like so much more powerful, but like in an unearned way. And I already mentioned like Lila's ability to me is that exact trope. And right. I hate that much more than a Deus Ex Machina trope. Like I think it's used more than a Deus Ex Machina trope. And it's done in such a way that with more confidence than a Deus Ex Machina trope because they believe like, oh, because it's the villain and it's the bad side, it's okay if we just kind of make everything work out for them. And that bothers me even more. Like I really dislike that trope. So I'd say of everything in this season, that was probably the one thing that really annoyed me. And it's not that I have a problem with like, I like the reveal that she's one of the siblings and stuff. I just don't like the idea that like,
you just don't like her
suddenly
power
on equal footing with all of them.
Right.
And it just kind of felt like, it's like even if they had her power, it's not even the power that's the problem. It's that she's on an equal footing with every single one of them.
I think what the thing was, they wanted to make her like a legitimate threat. Like,
I get that, but I don't like that.
Because they're all gathered together in the end, so they want to make it so she's a legitimate threat to all of them combined, so that it wouldn't be like they could just steamroll her, and like because like that would also be anticlimactic.
There's an easier solution to that though, and that is that she isn't as good as everybody else's powers as they are, but collectively by using everybody's powers, it doesn't matter. She's a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
And they didn't do that. They made her basically better at everybody's powers than themselves.
Right.
And to me, that felt like weak and unearned, like that's kind of, it just felt unearned to me, because it's like I said, Hargreaves had Vanya training on the violin like nonstop and was pressuring her so much on that, even when he was like restricting her powers. Like all of these kids have been training their entire lives through traumatic experiences, like the shit that was done to Klaus and stuff, all so that he could develop and use these abilities. And then here she is just using them like it's nothing. And it just makes the whole thing feel cheap. Like it just makes what the characters went through, what the protagonists went through through feel like nothing. So it's a big pet peeve of mine. Like I said, we talked about heroes doing that, you know, and to me, it's kind of like a sloppy writing tool. So
Okay.
I just wish they hadn't have done it that way, or I wish they had applied some more limits to it to make it make more sense. That she could use all their abilities, and by using all of them, she could outclass them because she could use all of them, you know, and that even though they're together, they're still not 100% in sync. They're still not used to working with each other. And she's able to kind of work in collectively, and it's the fault of them not being able to work well together that allows her to best them. That would have worked for me, but what they ended up doing instead just felt kind of like rushed, and I just really wasn't a fan of it.
I mean, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, some people might think that's like nitpicking, but it's a pet peeve is the problem, you know. It's something I've seen before in a lot of other things, and it always annoys me. So it's not about nitpicking, it's about the second you see it, it's like, oh, this shit again, you know?
Right, exactly. It doesn't bother me, but I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Is there anything else you wanted to kind of mention about the show?
I'm looking forward to season 3. I know that.
Yeah, season 3 has been confirmed.
It was a great cliffhanger. It was like a great last episode. I thought, Jesus, they threw everything in the kitchen sink at this episode, and I love it.
Season 3 has been confirmed, and with the current state of COVID-19, we should get it around 2027.
Good. just in time for the actual apocalypse.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that's it pretty much. Do you have any kind of hopes for what we're going to get in season 3? Like,
I hope we learn more about Reginald Hargreaves, like he's all about.
Yeah.
Because he's still, like, even at the end of the season, he's still a very mysterious character. So I hope we get to learn more about him and his motivations.
Yeah. They can't do the same thing that they did for the past 2 seasons, which is have the family be divided.
Oh, geez.
And have the whole season about having them get back together. You can't do that a third time.
It doesn't look like they're going to do that.
I hope they don't. Like, I hope that they don't try to do that again, because you can do that twice, you know? You can do that the way they did it in the first season, and the way they approached that in the second season was different enough to make it work, but you can't do it a third time. It's too much, you know, like it needs to be more about them being together on the same page from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes stale if they do it too much.
I hope they introduce a lot of different people with a lot of different powers.
Yeah, me too. I hope Lila is kind of a door to learning about the other 40-something children and what happened to them, you know, like that would be interesting. Maybe even like some of them are part of the Sparrow Academy. Maybe it's not all like the same people.
Assuredly, you know. Yeah. I'm sure that basically what the implication of that ending was that Hargreaves, having met the current members of the Umbrella Academy, except Ben, mind you, who was there, he's the only one he didn't meet from that group, was like, this group of foolish kids are complete and utter failures and they solve nothing. So I'm going to alter my tactics a little bit. And a part of that is that he just didn't recruit those same people.
Yeah.
He went after different kids.
He went after different kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. Maybe there's alternate versions of themselves in this timeline because, you know, like maybe not, like where did they go? If not, you know, that they're just replaced, because if they weren't part of the academy, then did they somehow travel back in time some other way? Like what happened there? So that'll be interesting to kind of see if anything happens with that. Like it might be interesting to see all of these people in like their version if they had never been taken away from their moms.
Right.
Like
exactly.
Is Vanya like in Russia? Like, you know, is
right. Like there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah. That's it for the Umbrella Academy. Well, not it for it in its entirety, but we're caught up now.
That's it for season 2.
Yeah. Okay. Season 3 is confirmed, but it's not anywhere even on the horizon yet. But it's time to talk about what is coming up on the horizon, what shows are coming up. We are recording this on August 10th. On August 13th, that's a Thursday, 5 Bedrooms comes to Peacock. On Friday, August 14th, Ted Lasso comes to Apple TV Plus, and The Great Heist comes to Netflix. On Sunday, August 16th, Lovecraft Country comes to HBO. We'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. We're not talking about that next week. We're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about that week to week until it finishes. We'll be doing both that and The Boys once The Boys comes back. We'll be kind of doing those at the same time. On Tuesday, August 18th, Dead Pixels comes to the CW. On Friday, August 21st, Lucifer returns to Netflix. I believe it's its final season. It got saved by Netflix like a season or two ago, and so it's got one left, I think. On Sunday, August 30th, Love Fraud, the new miniseries, comes to Showtime. So that's it for what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week on the podcast, we are going to be talking about A Touch of Cloth. This is a British, kind of a spoof of police procedurals from Charlie Brooker, who's the creator of Black Mirror. And this is it's just a really funny police procedural spoof. And the entire series is 6 episodes. And I think it's only 3 here in the US. So when you go on, it's on Amazon. That's where you'd be able to watch it in the US. And if you go to Amazon and look it up, you'll see seasons 1, 2, and 3. And each season is like 1 episode that's like an hour and a half. Originally it aired as like 2-hour-long episodes or something. So I guess they combined them. It's a little weird, but anyways, basically it's like 3 movies essentially. And we're going to talk about that entire series next week. So if you want to, be caught up with us on that, just check that out on Amazon Prime. A Touch of Cloth is what it's called, from Charlie Brooker. So that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at VoxelHero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel, as well as a bunch of other goodies from back in time, from when we used to be TV enthusiasts, from all that stuff. You can go back and check out all our videos and other stuff there. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best